Good afternoon and welcome to our sixth and final session of our series on large class playbook. Today I've invited my friends and colleagues from the School of Music, Dr. Josh Bedford and Mrs. Angela Tips, to talk about their strategies and approaches for how they teach very large sections of courses in the School of Music. So take it away, Dr. Bedford and Mrs. Tips. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for having us, for putting on this series here for the Center for Teaching and Mentoring. I think it's been great. I've been to a couple of these myself. I've really enjoyed them, so thank you all for that. Today we're going to be talking about activating engagement, and both Angela and myself, sorry, I wanted to go Miss Tips. I don't know.
Angela's good. Angela's good.
Angela's good, okay. We both teach some large classrooms that are geared towards the general ed classroom population. You teach MUS 1030.
Yes, part of the True Blue curriculum.
Yes.
In the humanities.
Yes, so you teach Introduction to Music, MUS 1030. I teach the World of Music, MUHL 1610. Mine is a little different though. It features both music majors and non-music majors. It's kind of an interesting class, but both follow the True Blue core framework, and so we'll talk about engaging those students who are in that classroom.
Josh, do you also teach in Hinton Hall?
I do
Okay.
as well, yes.
So let me describe a little bit about what our classroom looks like. Our classroom is actually the concert venue in the School of Music. So it's Hinton Hall, which is a big, I guess it seats maybe 300.
400.
Squeeze them in there. And so I have 150 almost every semester. You have not that many, but maybe 100 for sure.
I have it capped at 100.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, he's capped at 100. Smart. I'm not so smart. So I have 150. So it's, for those of you who are teaching in lecture halls, it's very similar, I imagine, because there are not movable tables. There is not a classroom where you can have alternate space. You're stuck there in theater seating. And so I think it's part of what we're going to try to talk about today is how do you manage that? Because of course, the expectation for someone who's taking a large class is I can be anonymous in here and there's no way I can do small groups. And no, that would not be the case in our classes.
Well, and that theater space, just to add on, that theater space is very different from the usual stadium style seating that you find in lecture halls, where you are down at the very bottom in the center talking up. The theater space for Hinton Hall, we are actually above the audience if we remain on the stage. So it's a very strange dynamic that's created spatially that you have to take into consideration. And we'll talk about, like Angela said, about how we navigate that.
To use a microphone, because you just can't speak that loudly. Acoustics are great for music, but not necessarily for speaking. And I like to say it's kind of like a type 10 stand-up comedy routine, basically, multiplied by 30 more minutes, you know.
Yes.
You do feel kind of like you're on stage. So to combat that, we've tried to put some strategies together to eliminate that feeling of just talking for 55 minutes or an hour and 25 and having the students more engaged, even though the circumstances and the space itself does not allow for that really well.
Yes. All right. Good. So I'm going to step over here if that's okay. Sorry, Bonnie, if you're moving the camera around so I can read this a little bit. But so we've introduced ourselves, but we'd like to do a quick poll. Or what we would do in a classroom like this is on the first day one, get in there and get people moving and discussing with one another about themselves. And so you can do this with a quick poll, or you can do with different introduction strategies. I do this as well as you. Introduce yourself to another person and tell them what you teach. We would change that to what do you listen to in a music classroom, like your favorite artist for that particular moment. And then you would take your partner with whom you've introduced yourself and then go introduce yourselves to another group. We were, in this space, it's going to be a little difficult.
We experiment,
but we can possibly experiment.
And Robin and I will be a couple.
Okay.
So explain ours.
Yes.
I'll come to you.
So in the classroom, then we'll have we'll say find a partner. Whoever you're seated next to will be your partner. You don't have to move around. And I want you to introduce yourself by giving your name, your major, and your favorite current musical artist. So go ahead and.
I'm Angela Tips. I teach music 1030.
My major is my current favorite artist. My current favorite artist.
I like a group called Boches State. There are cool 8 people, one on the part, sings superbly, the soprano is to Johnny. And so I'm currently there, just come on, my very favorite garden.
I'm gonna need you to roll that.
Oh,
Because I'm
yes.
here,
Oh, what is that?
if you don't mind. So Robin, originally I teach in the College of Education.
Have you talked?
My favorite artist.
I know you're still interested.
John.
Oh,
My husband introduced me to him years ago, 35 years ago, and there's a book about him, so I feel like I've been living with him.
wonderful. What a rich
In
life.
one word.
Oh, my goodness, and it's because it's like that now. Anyway.
Nice.
But
Oh, yeah.
that's where my.
No, I think it's nice.
Okay.
We have about 40.
Coaches.
Just eight.
Here,
Just.
here,
Thank you.
classes are.
You can talk forever.
Got about 15 seconds. Are we good? Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay, so now the next step for this would be the partners are now going to go introduce themselves to the other partner with the goal in mind that Angela will introduce Robin and Bonnie will introduce Keith and vice versa, Robin, or something like that, so that you have been paying attention, but also, oh, now we're all.
So we're all in one.
Yes, so now you're in one
Robin.
group.
She teaches in the College of Education. She's currently listening to John Prine because she's reading a biography about him. Her husband introduced her to John Prine some years ago, and since his recent death, we talk about it. It's an autobiography or a biography? Yeah, so
It's gonna
that's,
be his memoir that passed away.
and you introduced me to some.
Okay, this is my friend Angela. She teaches in the School of Music. She's currently listening to Voces 8 as a superb soprano.
Yes, it's a small choir baby.
This is Bonnie. We put ourselves in student forums.
Okay, good.
Right, a journalism student.
Mhm.
And I'm currently listening to Taylor Swift.
Oh, excellent. Always a good solid answer.
Yeah.
This is Keith. Keith is a music student. And I'm not sure who he's.
I heard Laban.
Okay.
I really don't know how to say that. Leve? It looks like Laufey, doesn't it? Leve. Okay.
What genre is that?
Kind of like jazz, classical, singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
She redefines all genres.
Okay.
She's everywhere.
She's very.
You're good now. Are we good? Have we introduced each other? Okay.
Here.
No, so this was great. So this was modeling then, how then as partners, how do you feel now after that? Do you feel like you know each other a little bit more? You feel more able to talk to that person and the person that's sitting next to you and then this new group that you just met? Did you find any similarities, in what you listened to? If not, were you fascinated by what they listened, right? Those kinds of things. From that group then, if we were doing this, if I was following directions properly, we would then be asking about in teaching, right? So now in a group setting, instead of just individually, now in a group setting, you're going to be talking about, all right, have you taught more than 100 students and what's been a big challenge for you if you've been doing something like that? Now you're working in a group rather than just by yourself having to think about these big challenging questions, right? Which can be very difficult. So this is a good way that we both use to try and break the ice for the students and to get students actively involved in speaking with one another, but also feeling comfortable in speaking in a classroom that is so massive. Because even when you said what Hinton Hall, 300, 400 seats, if we've only got 100 students in there, all of a sudden the space is consuming us as much as we're consuming it, right? Physically. So that can be doubly daunting. All of a sudden I've got 99 other people plus the professor plus the TA who are going to be judging me when I speak. And then this room is so massive. Am I even allowed to speak in this space? I thought this was a performance space, right? So, yeah.
And one of the things that I do, I'm sure you do too, is we partition off places where they can't sit.
Yes.
I don't want them up in the balcony section. So that's off limits. And depending on how many people they're only sitting in the front. Sometimes we have just done the middle section because then that forces them into having some community as well. We have some new friends on Zoom. Thank you. Welcome. Do we want to talk about a little bit? We could do this through Zoom as well. Just a quick poll of, have you taught a class of more than 100 people? And can you raise your hands or put a reaction of some sort in the Zoom, and maybe you could tell us what that is. Who's taught more than 100 people?
Are they posting in the chat, Johnny?
And maybe they can post in the chat, what's the question?
And what's one of the biggest challenges?
What one of the biggest challenges? And while they're writing, let's have, anybody want to share from our group?
I think the biggest challenge is engagement,
Yeah.
right? Engaging students rather than just, because it's real easy to talk at students for 55 minutes, but engaging them and getting buy-in and feedback is sometimes more challenging.
Well, we'll keep going then because we have some things that are going to allude to that. And please feel free to interrupt us with folks from Zoom who want to participate. We don't want to forget about you.
Nothing so far.
Okay, next slide then. So we've organized these into, I like alliteration. And so we have organized this into the performance part of teaching and making sure we're doing what we need to do in terms of that, and participation, which is the large crux of what we'll do today, and then presence in the classroom. So performance, participation, and presence, just because I liked alliteration, we have organized our time together in that way. I think that any teacher needs to have an element of, any good teaching is like a performance. Whether you agree with that or not, I can understand that. But I have a sister who taught English for 40 years and had a lot of student teachers come through her high school. And she would say to them, you ever taken a drama class or been on stage? And would encourage them to do that, because you have to be comfortable enough in your own body and with your own speaking ability and with going around and monitoring, being present. I get off the stage and go, and especially if they're doing an assignment and working on something together, I go and monitor so that I make sure everybody has a buddy and that they're staying on task. Usually they are by that time. And to just ask or answer questions if I need to be. So large enrollment classes benefit, I think, from the teacher, from the instructor thinking of themselves as a performer, because it's a large audience. It really is.
So in the large classroom, then thinking about being a performer, then you have to have energy. I don't know if any of you have ever stumbled on the TikToks or the social media reels of the teacher right before they enter the classroom trying to pump themselves up. I, as a former cross country track athlete, I remember having to get into that mind space to.
I was not. Cross country. Go ahead.
But I had to get into the mindset, the headspace to engage with that, to perform. And the same thing with performing in an ensemble or something. I think you have to adjust your mindset a little bit and get ready for that kind of performance. And a lot of that is then harnessing the energy that you have and making sure that you are ready to go. Before I teach a large classroom, I'm not doing a bunch of different things because I need to have my mind right. Because if I'm trying to get my mind set up 15 minutes before class as I'm walking over there, I'm not going to do well in those first 5 minutes, and I might lose them for the rest of the 120 or the hour 20 that I'm going to have them. So I think, the energy, making sure that you're ready to go. You don't have to be over the top.
No.
That's not always the performance thing, but you have to just have a little bit of that vim going on. Storytelling, driving, or did you want to add? Yes, please.
I have a friend who wrote, it was a professional storyteller and wrote a book. And in the first sentence, it said, everyone is a storyteller. And the best lessons that I teach are those when I'm telling a story about a particular piece of music or a particular composer or a particular, we were talking today about Tejano music and Lydia Mendoza and her life trying to reach the people of her cultural identity and bringing that out on the map. And so those stories are so important. I don't know how that translates to physics though. That's the thing with me.
Sure.
But if you've got any of the liberal arts, we got you covered, because there's all kinds of great stories, English and history and art and all of those things that we have an advantage, because there's almost always a story behind the music that we're learning.
Well, and I think just keeping with the storytelling, I mean, even in physics, surely you can think about the subject matter from a standpoint of like plot setting and climax and so on, and see how you could navigate some of that in there. Because yes, we do like stories. Even our social media is all nothing but 40-second stories now, or 30 seconds or less. And then building off that into variety. Variety is really important. In music, we're very lucky because we have variety of genres at our disposal to use for anything. And we often have to incorporate that variety into some of the more, older genres and art forms to engage the students at times. Because if I'm talking to them about opera, they're going, I don't know anything about opera because it's been around since 1598, 1599, 1600, something like that, 400 plus years. And, when I speak to 18 to 22-year-olds, they're not saying, I'm going to the opera tonight necessarily on their weekend. So what do, I bring in movies to talk about opera, especially when we talk about Wagner. We go to John Williams and talk about how he used aspects of Wagner to communicate very similar things to us in the Star Wars trilogy, the original one. So you've got to, if you can find that variety into other things that are more relevant to 21st century audiences. I'm realizing my Star Wars analogies aren't going to work all the time anymore with this group of students. I realize I am spoiling the ending sometimes of the original trilogy for them. And that's okay.
The new original is being redone though.
Yes, I think so.
It buys you a little time.
It might, yes. But understanding that variety, pulling from various resources to help explain the same concept is really going to help drive in some of that engagement.
For instance, we have 3 different units in you organize it differently, but we talk about classical music, opera and Mozart and all that. Then we talk about global music, and then we talk about American genres. So there are 3 different distinct units. In the classical one of the hardest ones is that early music, like the Renaissance period, because it's just not very exciting sometimes. It is for us music geeks, but I mean, nothing, it's kind of like my children. We end up at the end of the day and sing madrigals with my husband, but we're odd and certifiably. So I don't mind talking about that. But one of my favorite activities that I absolutely stole from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is to compare and contrast John Dowland, who was a Renaissance composer, who did lute songs, wrote songs that were accompanied by lute. He was kind of like the James Taylor of the Renaissance period, really. And I compare that, we listen to that, and we talk about the timbre and what instruments he's using, what's the key, what's the meter, and then we compare it to Stairway to Heaven. It's fantastic because the same kind of instrument started out, it's the same key, it's that same kind of melancholy text, and I absolutely stole it years ago. But and Stairway to Heaven, of course, is really old. That's classic rock.
But the students
still, there are always some metal people. That's not even metal, is it? Led Zeppelin. I don't know, I'm dating myself. But to deliberately find those activities that will mean something to them.
You're the voice of
Oh, okay. So this is excellent for me to talk about because 2 weeks ago, I lost my voice. I was out of school for 4 days. I can't remember when I've taken 4 days of sick leave, but I could not speak. So, and I'm a choir director also. So on the days when I'm not teaching this class, I'm directing a choir. It was very challenging. And you can tell that I'm still not quite over it. And I have my water bottle that I'm guzzling so I won't cough in front of you. So to train yourself to speak more dynamically, as I'm doing now, probably overdone, and to move across the stage or wherever your space is, but then also to move into where the students are sitting, proximity. If you're in education, you know about proximity. When little Johnny is not behaving as little Johnny should not, then you get closer to little Johnny, and in theory, little Johnny will stop being off task. That sometimes happens, sometimes does not. But the way you gesture, the way your facial expressions are, eye contact, deliberately looking at people who are playing Candy Crush on their computer and hoping that at some point they'll see you, right? Robin, you feel uncomfortable right now, don't you? Yes, because I'm staring her down, just to kind of keep everybody on task. And then instead of today, we'll talk about Beethoven. Started with, imagine being a composer and losing your hearing towards the end of your life. How would that make you feel? So setting it up, and it takes time to do that, but setting it up so that there's some either problem to solve or there's some shift in the plot line to make it more interesting. Again, physics, don't know.
I think one of my best classes with that narrative framing has been when I'm teaching early music, late Middle Ages, we're dealing with the time of the bubonic plague. And so I asked them, what kind of music do you imagine would have been written at such a dark period in human history? And then I'd say, well, we went through our own kind of mini dark period with the COVID pandemic. What kind of music was produced during that time? Do you remember? Do you recall? Or what kind of music did you gravitate to? And then we dive into the composer after that to realize that it's some of the most beautiful music you could ever hear, written at one of the most desolate of times. So the narrative framing really helps to get the students engaged. Yeah.
So both of these things are you've got to be a little bit different than in a class of 20 or 30. In a smaller space, when you don't have to overdo, when you don't have so many disruptions or distractions rather, by the big space, that there is a little bit of intention to the performance aspect of it. One of the things that we want to have you experience is when we talk about American genres and folk music, I asked them to look at This Land Is Your Land. Fairly appropriate this year because our country is going through the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Spoiler alert, I have a Buchanan Honors Lecture with this on it on Monday, shameless plug. But one of the things that I want them to look about with the text, and the reason Josh and I chose this, is because it's not specifically music related. It is a music piece, but you could also use it in history or in English or other disciplines as well. So many people know this land is your land, this land is my land. And I grew up thinking this was this ultimate patriotic anthem. My father was a chorus teacher in local public schools in Rutherford County. He would go from all these out of county like Kittrell and Las Casas and places that were the edge of the earth at the time that are now in the middle of the city and have choruses. And one of my earliest memories is to sit with my thermos of orange juice and my Pop-Tart next to my mother at the piano, her playing This Land Is Your Land for my daddy to teach all these kids. I had no idea that there were two verses that were left out. And so I want us to take a second, and this is a sort of a timely kind of thing to talk about strategies for working in groups. We're going to show you the text and we're going to let it play. Can we do that at the same time?
Yes.
We're advanced over here in the Center for Teaching. We're going to let you play. You're looking at the text and you're thinking, was there anything in these first four stanzas that makes you think that Woody Guthrie has a bone to pick, that he's unhappy about something in the country? Can we do that? So this would be in pairs or small groups.
Yes. So at this time, get into pairs or
Yes.
small groups.
We're talking about
Yes, we'll get
groups,
you
yeah.
all into a group right there.
And the folks on Zoom can chat their responses as well.
Yes.
This land is your land, and this land is my land. From the California to the New York Island, the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I went a walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway, saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me.
For time's sake, can we stop the music?
I roamed and rambled and I followed my footsteps.
Yes.
Sparked and
Or not? Let it go. It's a lovely piece.
around me, a voice was sounding. This land
Was made for you and me. Yeah, we can't
Didn't
stop.
Sorry.
So you get the idea. Now, what we would instruct our folks is this would be a daily activity, a quiz that is part of D2L. I don't call roll. I'm just not going to call roll. That's impractical. So every day, my students have something that's linked, a quiz. Doesn't have to be a quiz, but it's some sort of activity that's linked on D2L as a quiz that they will put their answers down to. So they're accustomed by now, this is the third and final unit. So they're accustomed to bringing up that daily quiz. And so I will say, think pair share, think first of your answers to, is there anything about in the phrasing of these first 4 stanzas that would make you think that there is something that he's unhappy with? Take a few moments and do that. We're going to do that right now. You'll pull the text back up,
Pull the text back up.
please.
The document, yeah.
And Zoom people, I would love for you to type that into chat as well. I need to find something better than saying Zoom people. Just the first 4. Yep, there we go. So take a moment and think about it. You can even on paper if you'd like, and then I'd like you to share it. And assuming people have written by now, then would you all share within your group? Do you think that there's anything that gives a hint at his unhappiness with the way the world works? Go.
I kind of think it gives away in the first line. Like the fact that that's, no, I don't know if this is how if he wrote this chronologically, but let's just assume for a moment. Like the fact that he has to start by saying, this is yours, this is mine. Then I think there's like maybe implication that he has a reason to start there. Perhaps, but they even have to say that.
Well, great. So that was my immediate thought, the fact that he has to state that this line was meant for you and me.
And from one side of the country to the other. North to south, yeah.
Keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. You keep going?
Yeah.
Sorry.
On the screen.
Any Zoom folks that want to share?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. They're hiding to being anonymous. And so then I would ask for if someone wants to share. And again, this is towards the end of the semester, so we've been accustomed to having somebody from the group to give an opinion and different opinions, right? Now, there are 2 stanzas that were not originally published. What does he mean in the no trespassing? I'm going to give you the text for the one about, there was a sign there that said no trespassing. What does he mean by that? Let's show that text if we can. So glad that's you and not me. So lines 17 through 20, this is one of the left out ones. So look at that and think about what you think that no trespassing sign might mean. And then share with each other.
Saying some are welcome, some people are welcome, some are not. Some sides of the school, some sides of the school.
Just help. Certain people know, oh, yes, thanks, Heather.
Certain people not allowed, yes. Yes,
What's the melody?
Is that on the recording?
it is not on the recording.
I was gonna say, because like,
I think there is.
18, I don't.
Is there one?
I think there's one that is floating around with what the original text, but not on this one through the library's website, which is where you're hearing this. So you already are getting a sense of the censorship around this.
I'm also wondering how those words, no trespassing, end that melody, like how it.
That's what we can sing.
Walking, I saw a sign there, and on the sign it said no trespassing. Right? Something like that. Yeah. I'm not
A good,
not a vocalist.
so you've hit us with a good strategy to sing that one together. I have the children sing, and
Yes.
these are not musicians. They can't stand it, but they sing it anyway. Many times there are pockets of people who have been in band and they don't mind. Again, we sing since the first day, so that there's an expectation there. So the idea is that there's a social class for sure.
Mhm.
That this side I can be on, but then the other people keeps people out. Then here's one more. He uses the image of a steeple to talk about places the people in the shadow of the steeple. What is his indictment? First of all, I sometimes need to say, what is a steeple? because churches today don't always have them, and especially churches that our young folks might go to.
Mhm.
So we have to talk about what a steeple is and what that represents. And let's show the last verse and talk about why is he using that imagery? Let me hear from a Zoom person as well. That would be lovely.
Yes.
No. In the shadow of the steeple, I saw my people. By the relief office, I seen my people. As they stand there hungry, I stood there asking, is this land made for you and me? That's pretty bad, but it gets the point across. So we'd spend some time talking about it, writing it. They're always writing their own things because the shy people in the class need a way to voice their opinion, even though they're never going to do this, right? What does our Zoom person say?
I've heard this song many times, but never realized lines 21 to 24. Yes.
Exactly.
Mhm.
You're welcome. It's your go-to way. And isn't it appropriate in this day and time when we are talking about different shows being canceled for what they say about different administrations and how this was happening in the 1950s, even 40s, maybe even. Right. What is the indictment of the steeple? What do we think? Why is he using that language?
In the shadow of the church,
Mhm.
they're not in the church, they're in the shadow, so they are not even welcome there perhaps.
Perhaps so. Is the church doing enough to feed these hungry people? And I use my experience as the former organist of a downtown church. You know, we have programs for unhoused people. Are we doing enough?
Yeah.
And when people who are not part of the church don't know what the ministries are, and we see unhoused people camping out on the front porch and they're going, why aren't you doing something?
Mm.
You know, there's always that kind of experience.
Yes.
So this is and then they would submit it, and then I would know that they have attended and that they have actively done the activity.
So then, and also, as you stated, just to reiterate, right, this is a music classroom question, but we're really analyzing text. Beforehand, we would have talked, like you said, about meter, about
Mhm.
form and everything, and they're starting to understand that. But then we.
Strophic form,
Mhm.
homophonic texture, all
Yep.
those things.
And so then you're hoping that the students are starting to combine a lot of that knowledge together, that folk music, often strophic, to get a point across, so that we're not worrying about the change of the melody when we're singing it, and that so many people can participate. And then, you know, getting into the rhetorical question or the rhetorical statement, this land is your land, by the end of these two missing stanzas. So yeah, I love this project or this assignment.
By the way, the piece was written as a response to God Bless America.
Mm.
The original tagline was God blessed America for me. And Pete Seeger told Woody, you probably ought to change that one. And he came up with This Land Is Your Land. You're also welcome. All this free knowledge. Take my class. It's so exciting.
So on the in the next section then, so this would be like the example, we've just gone over a concept, right? Folk music and American folk music in particular. Just introduce that now, and we ask you to participate. So now I want to talk a little bit about breaking down some of the participation strategies that Angela walked us through. So the first one we've just done a think, pair, share process. Think for about 30 seconds. Discuss in a pair for about a minute, and then share with the whole class. That's going to vary time-wise, you know, depending on where the conversation goes or the discussion goes. So a good example of doing this, which we've already done, but for this particular moment would be, think of a moment when a large class you taught felt especially engaged. What was happening? We've been sharing those kinds of things. I already know that many of the folks in here haven't taught a large class like this. In Zoom land, if you have taught a large class, and you want to give us something, please feel free to do so in the chat. And then as Angela was talking about, the benefits of this think, pair, share is really about getting everyone to participate. Everyone in these smaller groups feel much more engaged to converse with one another, especially if we've already done a lot of that introduction stuff in the beginning and we've made it a part of the class from day one. The expectation is already there. They're going to engage. It's low risk. No one's getting, demoted for their responses. You know, we accept all responses really, as long as they are meaningfully constructed, right? And they're just not trying to give us something to throw us off task. We accept all those responses, and it's our job as the instructor to really engage with those responses. Because a lot of times you'll be surprised in a 100-person class, the variety that comes at you that you have to navigate, and it's going to be so different from the way you're thinking about it. But then, it's up to us on the fly to do that. And then lastly, it really works. This works well in lecture halls with fixed seating. In the space, you can move pretty quickly, or they're already in pairs, these small groups. And then it's very, that in my classroom, they end up in like these little
Oh,
pods.
they're removed, that's right.
So so sometimes you might want to get them to move where they can, but it can be challenging, just depending on the space. Another strategy that we will use on the next slide is the 1 minute write. So the prompt, we just gave you the prompt. What about the steeple? Why is he using the steeple? Maybe we don't do the think, pair, share. Maybe we end up with a 1 minute write and just a quick response. This way, everyone is processing the question all on their own. They're not having to verbalize it. They're just having to write it down. The quieter students probably feel more comfortable and confident in writing that response out. And they're also reflecting at that particular time. And so getting these responses, then maybe that's one way you could use to take attendance as well. If they and say, hey, we're going to turn that into the TA or to myself and just write your name on it. I'm not grading you on your response. I just want to see it. And then maybe we'll have a discussion, or it might, become part of the next lecture, the time that you do this. One of their really interesting comments especially from the students who rarely do this, they always end up with one of these like earth-shattering responses. Yes. And you go, I have to talk about this in the next class or in the next time I do this lecture. Another strategy that we can use is small group micro discussions. We've already been doing a lot of this as well. I move my students into groups of 3 or 4 like all the time. Whenever there is a kind of question I want them to engage with, I get them into groups and say, let's discuss this. There is a sense of energy that rises up in the room, especially with a topic that is controversial at times. When we talk about Wagner again, I have.
What about that?
So
that's interesting. It's a perfect example.
So I was teaching opera as part of a unit on music and narrative in my class. Music and telling stories, and so we ended with Wagner, who's this well-known opera. I mean, if you're an opera lover, you know who Wagner is. And he has, yes, Looney Tunes opera, full of Wagnerian motives. Wagner is also influential in basically all the arts. Everything we do nowadays, he has some kind of hand in the lights being completely off. The orchestra being invisible, that's Wagner. Those are the reasons why we have the pits where the orchestra disappears. Wagner wanted the orchestra to not be distracting to the audience because he wanted the audience to be paying attention to the drama all the way through. So we have a lot of theater majors deal with Wagner as much as music majors do. So we all have some kind of engagement with Wagner, but rarely is it always in the public knowledge of his anti-Semitism. So we are enraptured by this beautiful music because he's got some of the most gorgeous music ever that's been littered throughout our entire, public consciousness, or at least our oral consciousness, right? So we talk, when I teach Wagner, we talk about this. That's gorgeous, love it. Oh my God, can you believe how much he did? Da, 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 da. Then at the end, I drop the hammer about the essay that he wrote, Das Judentum in der Musik, or The Jews and Their Music, which was a complete anti-Semitic tract written in 1850 as a pseudonymously. Then he attaches his name to it about 10 years later. That creates problems for us as we listen and enjoy this music. Then am I allowed to enjoy it? So I ask the students, I say, now with this knowledge, this new knowledge, what should we do with Wagner? Should we get rid of it? Can we still appreciate it? What do we do? And so I break them into groups immediately and say, you're going to have 5, I give them 5 to 7 minutes because usually it gets kind of, a little heated, but in a good way, right? And they did the other day, I swear, I was talking about opera and I could just see the glaze of their eyes just going, I don't know if I like this art form, Dr. Beth. That one, boom, everyone was up, and interested. And so now maybe, I don't know, how they feel. I don't know. I'm not going to follow them and see if they go to the opera or anything, but it got the engagement up. The energy in the room here, it creates energy to have these groups, especially when you've got some good groups with a good mixture of people and a good mixture, the quiet one, the more talkative one. But they're all friendly. I think, they end up, the quieter one ends up sharing a whole lot more in that particular section than in front of 99 other people. They also get to process the ideas socially. They get to say, well, I didn't feel too great about that new information. I don't know how I feel about this music anymore. Then they start discussing about, well, but I really liked it. Maybe I should, those conversations come up, and then they end up in these little connective communities that we can then use later on in the semester, or that continue beyond our classroom.
And I would surmise, if I can interject,
Please.
that the point of talking about Wagner as a musician is not necessarily the anti-Semitic part of it.
Correct.
So curriculum-wise, that doesn't have to be inserted at all.
Yeah.
And so I know that because I've taught this class since 2010, and I teach less content every year.
Mhm.
Because I know I'm supposed to get through all of these different composers and all of this different kind of music. But in the long run, I would venture to say they will be more engaged about opera because you inserted that activity and that thought.
Yes.
Just like This Land Is Your Land. Does that really have anything to do musically? Well, kind of. But what you think you will lose in terms of content, you will gain in terms of engagement. And in the long run, that makes your class more effective.
And in the critical thought that we're trying to build
Yes,
in these
correct.
kinds of spaces, which can be very daunting in a 100-person classroom, because usually we get, what is it? The easy way out in the 100-person classroom is to just fall back on content and to not try to engage so much.
And
So
lecture for
yeah.
55 minutes.
So
Put a video up and then not talk about it.
yeah, so these micro discussions are great opportunities for that. Another strategy, I think we got two more. Cold call with support. This is also fun because you've created these little micro communities, right, through these small discussions. Then, what do you guys talk about? Especially since you've been out there monitoring and going from group to group, be amazed at the things that they're saying in there. And then you walk past and you realize you've got this little sly smile about what they're saying and go, okay, I'm probably going to call on that group to share. And then they're going to share because they don't feel like they're getting put on the spot. There's always the little like, oh, you say it, no, you say it, no, you say it. But usually someone steps up because they feel supported. They're not going to be as anxious. We get more voices involved because the really great students often will say, well, what my group was saying, they said something really interesting. They'll point out one of their group mates, really important points, not even their own point. And so I think it's awesome to see them lift up the voices of their peers. And then the discussions are much more dynamic than just one response here, and then teacher's response there, right? That gets very stale very quickly.
If you want to, sometimes I will say, and if we're doing micro group discussion, pick a note taker, someone who's going to write down what you say, and then select someone who's going to talk,
Yep.
the reporter.
Yep.
Reporter.
Mhm.
So the groups have already thought about, I'm not really good at saying things, but I can sure take notes, so assign them ahead of time to give them something to do. Also, just really quickly to say, talking about contrasting responses, one of the things that I do when we're finishing up classical music is to have someone perform John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds, just the first movement. If you're not familiar with that piece, the music says tacit. There is nothing, which means nothing. The instruments don't play anything. So I have a student, one of their own, to come up and sit at the piano for 1.5 minutes, and I tell them ahead of time what's happening. 1.5 minutes for the first movement. I don't even know if that's how many the first movement is. And it makes them visibly uncomfortable. And we say, is that music? Now, John Cage's idea is that yes, it's music because the sounds, the arbitrary sounds that are going on and the participation that the audience has is in itself music. It's a very postmodern kind of idea. May have something to do with that he was a mushroom scholar. But anyway, so we'll have a discussion about, yes, I thought that was music. No way is that music. And those kinds of controversial things get them thinking about that.
And then lastly, polling, which we've already kind of talked about. It provides instant feedback, creates a sense of participation from the entire community, and then helps us actually gauge some kind of understanding of the material. These polls can be really effective with a short answer, with very short responses, and about the content or the material specifically, so that you could use a poll. I think I've done this before. Did you understand? X concept, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Thumbs up, thumbs down. And if it's not a raising your hand, if
Yes.
it's right in front of you, then the person who doesn't get it doesn't feel embarrassed that they don't get it.
Mhm.
I did with my chorale yesterday, a scale of 1 to 5. How comfortable are you with this piece of music? 5 is I could perform it today. 1 is I don't even know where the notes go. And they just put the numbers up. We could do that with anything. That's really helpful to do that.
And then I think we were talking, Canvas has a really great polling metric that you could use for your online surveys if you're running it synchronously, or even in a face-to-face setting. I know we use Brightspace D2L all the time.
Surveys can sometimes do
Yes.
that, but that's not.
Surveys are a
always-
bit clunkier
Yeah.
than what these polls on campus will be. So that's an idea that you could take as well. Last concept, presence.
A lot of students deliberately pick a large class because they want to be anonymous. They want to sneak in. Nobody knows I'm there. They sneak out. And sometimes, despite our best intentions, that does happen.
Yeah.
I just quit sweating that because there is just the person that just needs to be how they learn. And I don't want to force them into something that's uncomfortable. But they need to feel like, even if they're not participating in the ways that we wish, that we at least see them, that we acknowledge that we're looking at them, that we feel like they're included. And there's a modicum of, we have opened this to you and it's your turn to kind of step through.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of this can happen on the first day as we're starting to get an idea of students' names, right? So yes, we may not call roll in these kinds of classes, but still want to know who you are. I know you probably do as well. Well, in my situation with both majors and non-majors, I go into Pipeline and I'll look at the various majors that we have because I want the music majors to know how many incredible people from across campus they have that we have invited over to our space. And I want those who are not music majors to know that they're not the know-it-alls in here either, nor am I. We're all in here learning something together. And so this name and identity aspect can be really challenging in that kind of dual space, because you might find that the music majors feel like I'm reiterating things that they think they already know, even though sometimes the best learning is to relearn it over and over again. Us as educators know this when we have to relearn for the 75th time this same piece of art, or the same book or whatever, but we find something new every time we go back to it, right? So it's good for the music majors to see that. It's also good for the non-majors to realize that there is not a line dividing us of who can and who cannot in the world of music. The world of music is everyone. And I know, music is not necessarily universal, but everyone can participate in some way with it. And so I think it's really important for me that first day to help draw those lines. So I end up, I assign something about how non-musicians, or what is a non-musician essentially. And we do some reading, we do some discussion it's actually about how we listen, where we can be really musical, and everybody, for the most part, can participate in that conversation and in that discussion. And then, when we think about the disability and access as well, I've had numerous students with various with DAC recommendations, and they do a really great job of helping me. to make sure that those students feel included in the space as well. Even with disabilities where we think that they won't be able to participate, I've found ways to make sure that they can, so that we make sure that that door is not closed off for anyone, and that name and identity that they feel seen, heard, and included.
I want to make sure we have some time for questions, so I'm going to
Yes.
go jump ahead a little bit.
Please.
What you have, go back just one thing. The autobiography assignment is NPR, National Public Radio, and the New York Times have wonderful assignments called through the Learning Network. And so one of the assignments at the beginning is a 6 Songs of Me playlist. And they have questions about what is the first thing you bought, when people don't buy music anymore, but what is the first one you downloaded? What is a piece of music that calls your childhood? Those kinds of things. They're low stakes, 25-point kind of things. I read them. They will pour their heart and souls out into them at the beginning of the semester, something simple like that. In these micro communities, I often, because I learned it from my good friend Glenda Gooden, I ask them in our listening exams, they can collaborate on the exam that may be too far for you, but they can sit in these micro communities and we play the example, and then I say, what do you talk to your partners and see what you're talking about. The first time I did it, I thought I was going to go nuts. This is not right. But then Glenda said, go listen to what they're talking about. And they were talking about, well, it's monophonic because there's only one line of music. Somebody else would say, yeah, but there's like 20 people singing. It doesn't matter if there's one line. They were talking about the issues and teaching each other. So I was a believer. So a vested interest in getting them to be in micro communities is teasing them with, it doesn't have to be every exam, but you can do this together and everybody gets credit for it.
Really quickly, this is just a structure, kind of what we have tried to demonstrate a little bit of today.
You can see if we practiced what we preached.
As you know, well, I'm just gonna say it's my fault. I have always been resistant, even as a public education major, to the very strict numbers, I've got to talk about this for 5 minutes, talk about this for 10 minutes. I resisted it as an undergrad, I really did, which is probably why I ended up in musicology or something. But I think you let things go where they go. But you still have to have an idea. I'm not saying I walk in with no framework. I have an idea of where I want to go. But it's probably more like a baseball score if I got through everything, like 20% of the time. But this is just kind of an idea of what we were doing today and how you could organize it for a 55-minute lecture. Yeah.
So final thoughts. Large classes stay engaged when the attention resets frequently, when you are mixing up and not just lecturing. Lectures don't have to mean passive learning. There has to be some moment of I'm explaining to you this concept, but then there's got to be something where they give back. And they are participants more than spectators. May I say, this semester, I think I told a couple of you, it is an epic fail in my classroom. There are only, for whatever reason, 50 kids. And that seems like there's like 5 people in the class compared to 100. So there are 50 kids. We had 2 class periods, and then we were out the whole next week. So we pivoted to some online instruction, which is not the same. Then I was out. I was on a search committee. The times when those rehearsals happened were during my class time. So my GA, who's wonderful, but it's not me, at the beginning of the semester was teaching. So I was out 6 class periods at the beginning of the semester. We lost whatever community building we could do. So, and I have not regained it since. So it takes some time, and all the planets have to be in line for that to happen.
Yeah. Well, and don't forget, and sometimes, these are strategies you can always introduce anytime throughout the semester as well. Now you're going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting though, if you're going to try to build that community. That is best to do day one, because it's very hard to pivot to this community building like after spring break or something. Basically, everyone's got the expectation for what class is going to be, and it can be very hard to do that. So if you want to build the community, start that way, and then, but you can use these strategies here.
So every class period, I try to give something for them to reflect on for the next time. And it gives, again, those who need a little more time to process, okay, by the next class period, what is one strategy from today that you might use in your next large class? And if we were to meet again, then we would open discussion with that. right? With the first day of class, I give them the idea, the sentence, listening to music is different from hearing music. I'm not sure that even makes sense, but they go with it and they get all philosophical about the words listen and hear. And so that's their exit reflection. And then they come back and that's what we begin with.
So we'd like to leave you with an exit reflection of what is one strategy from today you might try in your next large class to think about as you go forward.
Good. So, but we've got like 1 minute left. I want to invite questions from the Zoom room. If you want to post any questions or comments from the chat, or feel free to take yourself off mute and just post them to the space. We can hear you in here. So I'll just give wait time for that to process. Okay. So with that, I would like to thank Josh Bedford and Angela Tips for their fantastic session today on just all things engaging students, best practices for facilitating community. And thank you for joining us today, to those of you in person and on Zoom.
Thank you.
Very good.